We're getting some trash talk from the East Coast, Glenn. Saying it rains here all the time. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning to everybody west of Winnipeg. I think I have that right. And good afternoon to everybody on the east side of Canada and central Canada. I'm Rich Widdifield from the Donor Motivation Program, and I'm in Vancouver. And I'm with my good friend, Aimee Lindenberger, who is the chair of the Vancouver chapter of the CAGP. So welcome, Aimee. Aimee is also the Chief Engagement Officer of her company, Refocus Communications and Fundraising. And we are very excited to talk about planned giving and philanthropy this morning. But first, we want to talk about cocktails. So Serena that organized this is very worried that I'm going to spend the whole time talking about cocktails, but because originally when we started this, it was 10 a.m. and Serena said, well, maybe you don't want to do cocktails. And Aimee and I both said, no, we're up to the challenge. We will start drinking at 10 a.m. if that's what it takes. And since it is summer, sometimes you're by the lake or by a cottage or camping, and maybe you start drinking a little earlier than normal. So our theme this morning is going to be morning cocktails. Aimee, why don't you tell us what you're sipping on at 10 a.m. in Vancouver?
Sure. Well, I'm calling this one Creative Juices because it's sort of a joke of mine that anytime I'm working on fundraising communications, I'm writing, or I'm planning a donor engagement system for a charity client of mine, I really need a coffee by my side. It helps get my sort of brain turned on and thinking. So this is a coffee-based cocktail. And I sometimes call coffee my, my magical bean juice. So this is a delicious coffee cocktail paired with whiskey, another favorite beverage of mine. And so this just is such a nice blend, and I don't do dairy, so I used the frothy sort of aerosol coconut whipped cream, and it makes it really nice and light and airy, sort of like you want in the morning. So it's super delicious, and I highly recommend it to get those creative juices going.
It looks fantastic, Aimee. Now, Aimee did share with me that she started her day with a quadruple shot at Starbucks. So I think coffee is kind of her thing.
It's true.
Now, I could spend the whole half hour talking about morning drinking. My wife loves the traditional mimosa, although she's an easy on the orange juice, and let's not be, and be generous with the champagne type of person. One of my favorites to start the day is a Radler, if anyone's had those, beer with grapefruit soda. Good way to ease back into things after maybe a night out. And then, of course, we're going to go to the Canadian favorite, the Caesar. So the Caesar, all my research that I did, which consisted of one Google search, shows that it was invented in Calgary. Cheers to our Calgarians. In 1969, so the Caesar celebrated 50 last year, and I think it's looking great. Now, some people would garnish their Caesar with a piece of celery. Here's what I say to that. I garnished mine with a breakfast sandwich. Now, this took me about an hour to make this morning. My wife said it was a tremendous waste of time, but I think the garnish really makes it. Don't you agree? So cheers.
Absolutely.
To the Canadian favorite.
Cheers.
So we're going to get started with our philanthropy discussion, but we do want to get some chatter going at the bottom of your screen for those of you that aren't as familiar with Zoom. I'm sure most of you are very familiar. You can put your comments in. Some of you are already doing that. And I want to give a thumbs up to Keith Thompson and Ruth McKenzie, who started the Campfire chat about a month ago, and also to Glenn and Jeff, who did a great job. But one of the things that keeps coming up is Ruth's donkey art. So I'm going to say that maybe we should start this as our campfire chat Moscow mascot. And feel free to put some chatter in on whether you support that idea or not. And no cyberbullying about how the donkey looks like your co-host. So Aimee's company is Refocus Communications, as I mentioned, and Aimee shared with me that she just did a certificate on philanthropic psychology. The vodka's getting to me already. From the Institute for Sustainability for Philanthropy in the UK, which sounded extremely interesting. And congratulations, Aimee. Why don't you share a little bit about the course and how you're using some of that information in your communications for charities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, it was a fantastic course. It's Adrian Sargent and Jen Shangs are the key folks behind the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy. And so they're, you know, at the forefront of research into decision-making around giving, how we can help donors give more. And so one of the things is, so a little bit, it's an 8-week course. So a lot packed into 8 weeks. And I was doing it right as the pandemic started. So it was a little bit bumpy towards the end, but I'm super proud to be one of only 3 in Canada to have this distinction. I was the first cohort, so hopefully there will be more Canadians joining me soon in that elite club. But it really pairs well with what I do at Refocus. And, you know, my main purpose at Refocus, it's right in the name. It's to refocus how we talk about philanthropy and giving away from the typical asks of, you know, we need this MRI machine. It will cut waiting lists by this much. It will, you know, save people by, you know, this many people per year. And while that's great, you know, we do need MRI machines. We do need people to get treated more quickly. We are missing the piece around why that donor is interested in that. It's probably not specifically to cut waiting lists. There's a reason that they're involved in that hospital foundation, or in rescuing animals, or in saving the environment. And we need to speak to that, because that is really where people get that sense that they're seen and understood. But as we learned in the philanthropic psychology course, there are a lot of it's too many P's. I'm having that whiskey. I should slow down maybe.
Speed up.
They're really showing in their research that there are a whole lot of decision-making processes that humans aren't really even conscious of, but it's so emotion-based. It's about their personal connection to something. It's the feeling behind why they started giving, what that connection in their life is, and the values behind it. So it's not about the tangible usually, particularly when we're talking about planned giving. That's a very long time frame where they're thinking about how it connects to their whole life story. And so, you know, some of the things that I've learned, even just in thank you letters, I'm already implementing some of these things in thank you letters, where we're shifting from thanking a donor for their gift, or thanking the donor for the impact their gift will have, but thanking just that human being. Saying, hey, I really see you. I see that you are a good person. You care about other people. You're doing this because there's something in you that sees the importance of taking care of others in our community, or, you know, whatever the cause may be. There's something in them that says, hey, this is really important. And so you thank them for their values and for their identity. And that gives them so much more a sense of well-being. And everyone right now in this COVID times can really use well-being. So from a charity to give them that sense of well-being, they'll keep going back. They'll keep giving more if they can, because they feel seen and heard and like they're important as a person.
I love that, Aimee, and I think everyone on this call, on this webinar, your donors love you, right? So just find ways to connect and make them, just realize that connection to the charity. And as much as they do talk about a specific cause, like an MRI machine or whatever, it really is a connection with that charity, with the people at the charity, with the people that charity's helping. And I love that. I think that's a great, great message. So we're entering month 5 of COVID. 2020 has been an interesting year, to say the least, in the understatement of the millennium. And it's thrown the whole country on its ear, and the charitable space is no different, right? Like a lot of charities are feeling a lot of challenges around how to communicate at this time to their donors and to help the people that they work with and support. I wanted to share a story. I don't know, because you probably didn't see it in the rest of Canada, but in BC in June, the Professional Golfers Association does an ALS fundraiser. I don't know if they do this anywhere else in Canada, but they do a golf-a-thon, a big fundraiser for ALS. I think they do an amazing job on this. But this year, their commercial was a little bit different, where they had a golf pro who came right out the first 5 seconds of the commercial. He said, we really struggled with whether we would run this fundraiser this year with what's going on in our country and in our province. But when we looked at the people that we support and the people that we help with ALS, we know that, that need has not gone away. So respectfully, we're going to run the fundraiser anyway, and we hope that you'll support it and that you understand why we're doing this. And I really give them credit for addressing that, that big issue, not ignoring it, and coming right out. I don't know how successful the fundraiser was this year versus last year, but I'm sure they raised some money for their organization and for people struggling with ALS, and I thought it was really, really well done. Aimee, do you have anything to share where you've seen people or charities reaching out and specifically communicating during COVID?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. All of the smart ones are. Everyone, whether you're updating your website to reference COVID or your thank you letters reference COVID, this is a significantly different time that donors are in, and we don't know what their challenges at home look like. As Dr. Bonnie Henry, I think, says, is we're all in the same storm, but in different boats. So we have to just try to keep everyone afloat. So one of the things that I really liked that I was a part of actually was with Easter seals. And they had sort of the bad luck with timing, where their annual spring appeal went out literally the week everything shut down here in BC. And so, the mail dropped and then no one could leave their house, essentially. So donors weren't coming out to post office boxes to return mail. Their donors are a significantly older population primarily. And so they don't do a lot of online giving. And their appeal was almost entirely referencing summer camp for kids. And so with the situation, people thought, oh, well, that's not going to happen. So they way missed their targets on that initial mailing. And so they came to me and said, what is there anything we can do to recover from this? What should we do? And I, in talking with them, my preference is always just be upfront with donors. They're people, they understand, and just straight up be a bit vulnerable and say, our mailing went out the week of the COVID lockdown, and we've substantially missed our targets for funding and we need your help. And so everyone understands that right now. And so with that vulnerability, with that directness and honesty, donors really responded. And so for a campaign that initially was, I don't know the exact percentage, but substantially off, that campaign in the end ended up way overperforming any of their spring mailings ever in the past. So the donors are committed, they want to give, they care about these causes, they care about Easter seals in this case. Like I said, there's something there strongly connecting them to this cause. And so if the charity says, we're in trouble, we like actually need your help legitimately, not that summer camp isn't legitimate, it's a great thing with lots of positives for medically sensitive children who often wouldn't get that experience. But this situation is different and donors understand that and they want to help. They just don't know how. And lots of charities aren't necessarily asking. So if you're vulnerable and talking about how COVID has affected your organization, it's almost a no-brainer. Donors who care will give.
I love it, Aimee, and I love the word vulnerable. Like, you know, put yourself out there. I think people are in 2020 or maybe more forgiving than they ever have been. So, you know, don't be afraid to send that message. And people are giving. I hope that we've all seen examples of that. But one of the people I was speaking with is Jeff Norris from the Royal Columbian Hospital Foundation. And he said he was reaching out to some donors just to check in and see how they were doing. And they actually mentioned that they have not been spending as much money as they normally would in 2020. And so they actually have some extra cash flow. They have some expenses that didn't materialize, potentially travel. So they were going to make an additional donation that hadn't necessarily been accounted for at the beginning of the year. So, you know, don't be afraid to reach out, in my opinion. Don't be afraid to reach out to your donors and see what they're up to. And it doesn't have to be an ask, just sometimes checking in. But, you know, I've been saying if somebody thought it was a good idea to donate in 2019, they still think it's a good idea in 2020. Some people have been negatively affected. And of course, that's unfortunate, and those people might not be able to help, but a lot of people have not been negatively affected, and some people in fact have extra money that they might be looking to donate. So you know, it's an interesting time, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there, I think. One of the other things that I saw early on during the pandemic, I think it was still in March, but it might have been April, was two charities coming together to do a fundraise for people in need in Vancouver. As probably everyone's aware, Vancouver has a very, very large homeless population. And Aimee, you know a little bit about this, so why don't you just share what happened there with the two charities doing their campaign?
Yeah, some of my favorite charities out there really wanted to show that they're coming together. They're not working in silos. They're not asking for redundant funds. And so Union Gospel Mission and the Salvation Army, both who work on the downtown east side with the most significant local area of homeless population in BC, went on a joint campaign. And they said, you know, in part, their goals were to show donors and the community that they work together and show that, sorry, I have kids here now talking to me, and to leverage some messaging, positive messaging in their news media. No, bears. Sorry, guys. And they set the goal to be raising $2 million in 2 weeks, which was, you know, a substantial goal. This was right at the onset of COVID, so no one really knew how long this would last, what this would look like. And so they didn't hit their 2 million mark in 2 weeks, but they did raise 1.2 million in 2 weeks, and they had significant coverage of the work they're doing in media, and they've generated a lot of new donors. and just a lot of goodwill for the charities to see that they are a community. And I think this is one of the things about the pandemic that we've seen, is that people are more interconnected than we sometimes maybe realize. Our communities are more interconnected, and our lives are fragile, more fragile than we realized. And so to see that there's a community at work working together, that was really positive for both charities. And so there were gifts from a lot of outstanding donors, but also just new donors who were seeing this in the news.
Yeah, I think that was great. And I'm just going to do one more last plug. Cheers to that one, Aimee. And feel free to comment on our new mascot.
Children.
I love that the kids are worried. I think they're worried about your day drinking, Aimee.
They had some question about getting a game on an iPad, I think, out of the corner of my eye.
They're like, Mom's drinking again. We bet we could probably get on the iPad. Another story that I heard from one of the charities that I'm connected to is Power to Be, which is in Victoria and Vancouver. And Tim Kermode is their CEO. And as soon as the pandemic hit, they do programs for children and adults and families with challenges, and they do outdoor therapy. They take them they actually have a property in Victoria that they do a lot of stuff. They do hiking and kayaking and skiing, and amazing work with their participants. But of course, as soon as the pandemic hit, they can't do any of these programs. And I love the fact that the first thing they did is they said, what can we do to help our community? We have all these vans that we're not using right now. So they reached out to some local food banks in Victoria and used their vans and their staff to help deliver food to some of the people that were using the food bank but might not be able to come in. And I thought that was just so amazing. And I think there's a lot of stories out there like that, with charities that are just doing some great things that aren't about them. It's not about raising money or about their specific programs. It's just, what can we do to help? So I think you have an example of that as well,
Yeah,
right?
certainly, I've seen a lot of this, not just UGM and Salvation Army, but another one that involved Easter Seals again. They have, of course, Easter Seals House, which in normal times is so that children with medical issues and their families can come from across the province and stay down by some of the main hospitals while their children are receiving treatment. So it's like a home away from home for as long as they need to be here. But with so many non-urgent medical procedures being canceled by hospitals, and with some concerns around whether they really could safely house medically sensitive children in the Easter Seals House with COVID going on, they for a time decided, we're going to shut down Easter Seals House for a limited time. But very quickly, they also said, we have this building, what can we do to help? And so they partnered with Atira Women's Resource Center, or Society rather, and they were seeing this uprise in domestic violence, unfortunately, with people cooped up at home, some people losing their jobs, financial stress, all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, there have been an uprise of cases of domestic violence. So with that, they said, we have this building, we can help. And so they've made a limited partnership to house women and children who are fleeing situations of domestic violence, to help sort of get them back on their feet and into safety.
I think that's amazing. And to me, I didn't know that story until you shared it. I'd love to see the media talking about that type of thing, right? That's such a good news story about communities coming together and people that do great things all the time, but here's a different way that they just pivot and do something else great to help people that, and a lot of us are familiar that that there were a lot of people in troubled situations, that their situations got a lot worse during the shutdown. So we're coming up on just a few minutes left. So as we work on our drinks, what else are you seeing out there, Aimee? Like, Vancouver, I'd say Vancouver and BC has been a pretty good success story about flattening the curve and keeping the number of cases under control. We have started reopening. Maybe we're a little bit ahead of some provinces like Ontario and Quebec, but hopefully those situations will improve quickly as well. But what are you seeing out there with charities as we start to reopen and get back to a little bit of a more normal situation?
Yeah, I mean, it still seems to me to be a slow start. People are still trying to find their feet after some fairly significant layoffs in a lot of the major charities and even some of the smaller ones. So they're sort of figuring themselves out, it seems to me, in a lot of cases. In my mind, the smart ones are working hard at still getting appeals out there, still connecting with donors, using this time as a good time to check in with legacy prospects who are interested potentially in planned gifts, because like I said earlier, I think this is a crystallizing moment for a lot of people. And there's so much energy around making the future better. And what do we want to see different as we come out of COVID, hopefully? Like, this is a time where people are committed to investing hard work, energy, and their dollars to supporting what they want to see different in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end. And things are getting back. I mean, a lot of the charities do big events, and those probably aren't going to happen, and it's difficult to predict when they will start again. But hopefully just by reaching out and connecting and doing some of the great suggestions that Aimee had, especially at the beginning, hopefully you can keep your revenue up and continue to serve the people that you guys all do amazing work for. So with that, we'll wrap up. Now, the key on morning drinking is to remember, if you have some appointments later or something to do later, you gotta pace yourself. But if you have a free afternoon, by all means, add another shot and maybe plan for an afternoon nap. It's summer after.
But also hydrate.
Aimee, always the wiser one. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. This was a pleasure to be part of this. And thank you so much, Aimee. You had some great stories and some great insight.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. I love chatting about philanthropy and planned giving, so I'm happy anytime.
Yeah, that shines through for sure. So have a great day, everybody. And we will see you at the next Campfire chat. I should probably plug that, but I have no clue when it is. So I'm guessing hopefully in a couple of weeks. And I think this is a great format. So hopefully we'll see you all back for the next one. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.